build a PC. Not to build a PC. Building a PC is pretty simple, and all you need is really basic skills and basic parts, such as a motherboard, which supports your processor, a processor, which supports your motherboard, more on that later, a hard drive based on your desired size, or an SSD, a computer case, which supports the size of your motherboard, some RAM, which could be DDR3 or DDR4, a power supply, and some extras that you can have if you're doing something else with your PC, some thermal compound, a wireless card to connect it to Wi-Fi, and a graphics card if you're going to be gaming. Now, you're going to want to make sure your processor fits your motherboard and your RAM fits your motherboard. You can look at that by your motherboard specs. You can also find some websites which will tell you how big your power supply needs to be based on your computer's requirements. Now, the first step is to lay down your case and open it up and move all the wires out of the way. Then get the side panel attachment, which is included with your motherboard, and align it with the case and pop it in. This can be a little finicky, but after a few tries you can get it in there just right. The next step is to move all the wires out of the way and just make room for your motherboard, just a placement. Now just place it and make sure you install your side panel piece correct, and then just remember where your standoffs for your motherboard need to go. Then remove the motherboard and we're good for that part. Now, you can use your motherboard's box, which is included as an anti-static workplace after you place your motherboard on it. Over here, we are zooming into the computer's or the motherboard's processor socket. This is where you place the processor. What you'll want to do is align the triangle on the edge of the processor with the triangle on the edge of the motherboard or socket. Close your retention arm, slide it under the screw, and then use the little lever to push it around and then put it under the tab. Good. Now, remove the tab on the side where your RAM stick goes, align the notch in the middle of the RAM to the notch in the socket, and based on how many sticks of RAM you're using, refer to your motherboard's instructions and just firmly press on each side of the RAM stick until it goes in. Now, get the included processor heatsink or your own desired heatsink and find what closest the wire can go to your header for fan on the motherboard. This can go for better cable management. Now align the pins on the top of the cooler and just firmly place them inside the hole on the motherboard. There are 4 pins around the circumference of the fan. Once you are sure that the motherboard fan is firm and secure, you can now route the cooler wire to the fan header. Now, you can install a power supply for your computer by aligning where you want your wiring to go, and then just aligning your power supply with the outro of the case. It can be on the top or bottom, which is in this case on the bottom, and then use the 4 included screws in the bag which your motherboard came with to screw it in. After that, you can use standoffs and a 5mm socket and a little screwdriver attachment to easily install the screws on where you're zooming in now, the holes where the motherboard goes, which you earlier noted. Do not over tighten this, as you can break the standoff or you can strip off the threads. Once you install all the standoffs and place your motherboard in, you can install the screws around the motherboard based on the size of whether it's ATX, full ATX, micro ATX, or mini ITX. You can see that there is a screw on the lower right corner, lower left hand corner, upper right hand corner, and upper left hand corner, and based on what type of motherboard it is, there also will be some around the middle of the motherboard. Avoid pressing too hard on a screwdriver or using too big of a screwdriver, as this can slip and damage your motherboard. Here you can see me screwing in one of the screws on the motherboard improperly. Do not do this. A very helpful tool would be a magnetic screwdriver. That way the screw will stay on the screwdriver and will make it much easier to screw inside the motherboard. Now grab the 4-pin header from the power supply and plug it into the 4-pin connector on your motherboard. In this case, the cord is a little bit short because the power supply I use is very cheap. Then plug in the 20 and 4-pin connector on the side of the motherboard with the 24-pin connector for motherboard power. From here you can connect any fans or hard drives using a SATA connector, SATA power connector, and Molex for fans. Now, grab the positive and negative light header for your computer and your power switch and your audio connector, and refer to your motherboard's instruction manual because this will vary from different motherboards. It is very hard to improperly plug in a USB header as one of the pins has been knocked out to prevent you from plugging it into a socket which it doesn't belong. You can now plug in USB 3.0, 2.0, HD audio, power connectors, and hard drive light connectors on the different pins of the motherboard to make sure that everything is fully functional. This can sound a little bit complex, but don't worry, as it actually is pretty easy once you read through the motherboard's instructions. You can now grab anything extra such as a USB or a PCI Express Wi-Fi link, and you can just find the PCI Express or PCI 16X slot to place it into. You can do this by knocking out one of the side plates on your side panel on the side of the case, and you can use a screw to screw it in. Firmly push it in, and use one of the screws included with your case to screw it in to make sure as your case is set vertically, it does not fall down. Here you are given a better view of the work. Do not over tighten these screws as this can damage both the express card and the case. Now you can grab your hard drive, whether it's 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch, use one of the motherboard's included SATA connectors to connect the motherboard to both the hard drive and the motherboard. Route the SATA power and SATA data connectors under the case cable management to prevent ugly cables from being in view, which in this case didn't seem like a priority as my cable management is garbage. Here you can see me plugging in the SATA power connector. You can then screw it into the hard drive and then just plug in the sled and then just slide in the sled into the case, therefore installing your hard drive. A cool tip is that you can take the extra bag of hardware and your side panel plates and place it inside one of the extra non-used hard drive caddies. That way you don't lose them for future need. Now you can screw in a DVD drive and use the same SATA power and SATA data connectors in order to install any DVD drive. Here you can see me first powering on the computer, which seems to be a utter failure as it is not showing a post. If the computer is properly finished, then you would see a post. But in this case, it seems that I have bent a CPU power connector, or I have bent one of the pins on a CPU, therefore rendering this computer useless. Okay guys, I seem to have killed the computer when I was installing the processor. Probably bent a pin. See, look, here I turn it on, computer goes on, but the monitor stays at no signal. So I guess video should be titled "How Not to Build a PC." Fail edition. Well,
this is it. How not to build a PC. Here's the motherboard in question. Focus. Yeah, well, pretty much the motherboard is done. Done for. There you go. So, like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to be here crying about my loss of motherboard. I hope you enjoyed this purely entertainment video. Do not try this at home. See you next one.